I like Joe Rogan, first and foremost. I'm a fan of Joe Rogan. However, I do have something to say. I've got a little bit of a problem with Joe Rogan. All that said, right? Like, he seems like a dude that, in all fairness, has no real interest in being a quote-unquote hero or a guy that is, sort of a revolutionary or anything of that nature. And fair enough to him. Like, he doesn't want to do that. That's fine. But when I think about Joe, and the reason I'm bringing this up now is because I noticed that he's kind of been self-censoring lately, right? He's not really been touching on, at least that I've seen. I don't watch every episode of his podcast, but I haven't seen him really touching on any of the hot button issues that are going on right now in the culture war or anything like that, really. You know, I know he had Tulsi Gabbard on not that long ago, and I'm sure they talked. I didn't watch the whole podcast, but I'm sure they talked some politics and things of that nature. But my point is this: is there anyone else on Earth, literally on Earth, that has essentially their own social media platform like Joe Rogan does? When I look at Joe Rogan, I see a guy that is obviously on Spotify. He doesn't own Spotify. I'm not saying that. What I am saying, though, is that Spotify has basically shown that they will not censor him, right? Like, they're cool with whatever it is he says for the most part. I mean, they had the one thing where they said Joe deleted some of his podcast episodes, and when he first transferred over there from YouTube, several of the podcast episodes didn't transfer over there with him. But aside from that, they haven't canceled him, right? They haven't put any real restrictions on what he can say, at least according to Joe. But what I've seen lately is Joe Rogan, since they tried to cancel him, and he even said he's not going to talk really a bunch about politics anymore. What was weird to me is that it's like, if Joe Rogan doesn't ever talk about anything that really is super important like he always used to, maybe Joe doesn't care if a few less people listen to his podcast. You know what I mean? Maybe he doesn't. But that's not the point here, in my opinion. We need someone that actually has a voice that will not be censored, at least unless it's done self-censoring. We need someone like that, in my opinion. You know, we need Joe Rogan to have, not only because it's Joe Rogan, he's the biggest podcast in the world, right? Like, it's the biggest show in the world, the biggest podcast in the world, etc. So to me, you know, for Joe to sit this one out, I'm glad that makes Joe happy, and I get where he's coming from totally. He doesn't want to get involved in it. He's really not trying to take that route. But I heard Patrick Bet-David one time say this, and I'm gonna reiterate this because it was very true at the time, and it's very true now. A lot of times, this is what Patrick Bet-David said, you'll see in a movie, right? You'll see a hero. And I'm not saying Joe Rogan needs to be our hero. I'm just saying, bear with me. You'll see like a hero, right? And that hero's like, no, I don't want to do it. You know, I don't want to go take out the bad guys or whatever. I'm happy. I'm retired now, whatever. You know, there's a lot of storylines like that. And you'll see situations where eventually in those movies, something happens and the hero's like, all right, fine, I'll go do it. Now, I'm not saying Joe Rogan has that kind of power. I'm also not saying he doesn't have that kind of power, to be honest. But what I'm saying is that it would be a whole hell of a lot better for humanity in anybody that's about freedom. It would be better for all of us if Joe Rogan were to not censor himself. And I'm not asking him to do anything insane, right? Like to die for this cause or anything. Well, all I'm saying is, dude, just be yourself. Just be the Joe Rogan that you've always been, the one that's not afraid to talk about anything. The only thing Joe Rogan has ever historically not discussed in great detail is his family, and that's perfectly understandable. I just think he needs to get back to that. So that's my problem with Joe. I don't think that he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a weak guy. I do think that there are certain things, like, for example, I haven't heard him talk about Alex Jones at all. Steven Crowder had Alex Jones on, and when Alex Jones was getting, attempted again to be crucified by the media, now he's have to pay, like, they're trying to make him pay, like, literally trillions of dollars. Alex Jones is very proud to be friends with Joe Rogan. And they are friends, at least from what I can tell. If that's your friend, bro, have him on the podcast, right? Like, it's a friend of yours. You have the biggest podcast in the world. He's getting smeared by the media with what we all pretty much know are lies, in for the most part. And you're not having him on. Why? Because, it's too much trouble. I think even Alex said something because Crowder asked him that. And Alex was like, well, Joe said I'm like a nuclear bomb. We don't want to, it's not something we want to do too often or whatever. And just to me, it makes Joe look weak. It makes Joe look like somebody that's like, well, dude, I've got hundreds of millions of dollars. They're not going to censor me. But, like, that's between you guys. I'm out of it. Joe kind of stays out of it now. And I don't think that, I just don't think that's why we all grew to love Joe Rogan, right? He's never stayed out of it. And I think that if he backs out now because of the crazy mob left or whatever, woke left, I just think that would not be a way for Joe to, I don't know. I just feel like if you have that impact and it's not really by any choice of your own, if that is your level of impact, you have some type of obligation to continue to do what you've done, at least, right? I mean, if I know there are people that if they were in Joe Rogan's shoes, they would be like, no, I'm going to die for this. Like even Andrew Tate is someone that says he obviously doesn't have what Joe Rogan has in terms of listenership or a following or an influence and things of that nature, but he's a big influence. I'm not taking anything away from him. But Andrew Tate said, look, I'm a man of God. I'm not shutting up. And he thinks they're going to kill him. And I don't know if he's wrong. So I think that if we could just get a little bit more of that, or again, just the Joe Rogan that we've always had, one that doesn't censor himself, I think that would be a gigantic benefit for all of humanity, at least those that love freedom. So that's my take. Like and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.